你们要干什么？哎，没有啊。
No, pero no le pegues, no le pegues.
No money. I'm Chinese. China. Passport.
Guys, I am proud to share with you one of the dumbest things I have ever seen in my life. Never, ever become a nationalist, because in today's lesson, we will see why nationalism is a very, very bad thing. Now, be a patriot all you want. Be proud of your country. Be proud of where you're from. But never become a nationalist. Never drink that Kool-Aid. Don't even take a sip, because this is how you might end up. Man, there's something going on these days with the amount of weird, bizarre links that people are sending me, strange emails, and all kinds of very, very seemingly dangerous stuff. And guess what? It's true. There's a huge uptick right now in people getting scammed, viruses, phishing, all kinds of personal info that's being leaked. And that's why I put my name behind today's sponsor, and that's Guardio. If you download Guardio from the Chrome or Edge store, you can run a free scan and find existing threats on your computer. And let me tell you, when I ran Guardio scan, let's just say I wasn't too pleased to find out how many existing threats were already on my computer. And I gotta be honest with you, this could be your case as well. Guardio is fantastic because with this browser extension, you're gonna be able to protect yourself from phishing attempts and harmful site blocking. Also, it'll scan to make sure that you don't have any malicious extensions running on your browser. And we know that your internet browser is the most important tool that you're using when you're putting in your information online. If your personal info was leaked all across the internet, and you'll be able to figure out what you're supposed to do next. One of the best things about Guardio is that it's not just for you. You can use up to 5 email addresses and share it with your family or your friends. And when you do that, you'll be joining over 1 million Guardio users who absolutely love it. And I put my name behind it as well. If you go to guard.io/Laowinner86, you're gonna get 20% off a monthly subscription. Get Guardio now and protect your online browsing and information. Avoid installing malware and falling victim to scams, and get real-time alerts when your information could be at risk. So if you want a clean and secure browsing experience, again, go to guard.io/Laowinner86 or click the link in the description and check out their affordable premium plan for full protection. Thanks. Enter Passport Douche. I like to call him Passport Douche. There is a minor internet celebrity in China that has learned that if you brandish your Chinese passport around the world, you can get out of the stickiest of situations. There is a rampant nationalist movement going on in Xi Jinping's China. If you didn't know, Xi Jinping's the leader of China, he's a dictator, he's one of the most powerful people in the world. And in his version of China, everything that is Chinese, or anything that deserves to be proud of, any part of Chinese culture, is because of him. And that's created this kind of godlike figure that every positive thing that comes from China is because of him, and he is the blessing to this world. Now, what has happened as a byproduct of a lot of that is that China has turned into this very, very almost North Korea-esque type country. It's a country that constantly sees its freedom ranking fall in the world to the point where it's basically at the bottom. It's a country that restricts every and all freedom of speech. It's a country that arrests children for slapping Chairman Mao statues. It's gotten out of control. It's North Korea with money. But when I say byproduct of all this, I'm talking about the media. We all know that America became popular and powerful around the world, largely because of its powerful military, but also because of its soft power. Soft power is when you make something cool that other people want. You would be foolish to not be able to admit that most people around the world consume American media in some way, shape, or form, whether it be Hollywood or TV shows or Netflix or anything that's coming out of the US, because it is a type of soft power. China has repeatedly failed any and all attempts to become cool around the world. Now, I don't want this to sound unfair. I lived in China for 10 years. I did it for a reason. I think China is a cool country. I think a lot of things about China are awesome. But those are not the things that Xi Jinping or the Chinese government are trying to portray. The cool aspects are the people I met in China. The very, very forward-thinking and awesomely pragmatic Chinese populace whom I love so dearly. That is not what the government wants you to see. They want you to see the shiny new buildings and how much control they're able to exert over their populace. And that is the bad part of China. Unfortunately, as a byproduct of all this stuff, their soft power media has failed to attract the attention of the world, and if it does attract the attention of the world, it's usually in a negative or embarrassing way. Now, unfortunately, there is a subset of people in China that have latched on to this whole nationalism thing. They love these movies that stroke the ego of the Chinese government. These movies that really portray China as the next hero of the world, while America is the villain. And my favorite example of this is, again, Passport Douche. Enter Passport Douche's world, where he goes around Cuba with nothing but a Chinese passport and a Chinese flag in his backpack, and commands the respect of all the thieves and robbers. Commands the respect and also saves those poor, poor girls in those countries where he can actually take them away with the power of his Chinese passport and get to the safest place in the world. Let's have a look at some of his work.
没有啊。
No, pero no le pegues, no le pegues.
No money 啊。
First of all, I'd like to say that in this clip here, Passport Douche is just assuming that Cubans walk around with planks of wood waiting to rob people in the streets while he has his Cuban dame to his side. He is not going to be robbed.
我告诉你啊，中国人不是好欺负的啊！杀我中华者，所以必诛。不要动手啊！
Now this phrase is very, very important. As you can see, these bullies, these Cuban thieves have approached him in the street asking for money, and he takes out his phone and says, "No matter how far, those who offend China will be punished." This is a Xi Jinping quote. In fact, they're actually using this in schools, in the education system, to warn anyone abroad that you do not talk badly about the Chinese government. This actually has nothing to do with protecting Chinese people. This quote from Xi Jinping is all about stopping dissent abroad. You guys have probably heard about the overseas police stations that are getting busted by the FBI, and other countries are finding them in their own countries as well. This is a way to keep an eye on anybody, not just Chinese people, but anybody speaking poorly of the Chinese government so that they can be punished. You cannot run away. China has whole campaigns like Operation Fox Hunt to make sure that people who are doing anything bad or anything against, like dissident-wise, against the Chinese government or speaking out against the Chinese government or holding protests are found and then repatriated back to China where they can be caught. And he's brandishing these absolutely nefarious quotes from Xi Jinping. But let's not focus too much on the negatives. Let's laugh at this a little bit.
I'm Chinese, China.
I like how this so quickly changes. It goes from, we're gonna bully you and steal your money, to when he whips out his passport, or as he calls it, the Chinese passbook, all of a sudden he becomes important and everyone starts bowing to him. By the way, we don't bow in China. It's not a thing. That's a Korea and Japan thing. But it's very funny that he villainizes the local populace, and I assume pays them to act in these movies, and then acts like some sort of action hero that is protected by his motherland. And he says, "Now fuck off for me." And they leave after apologizing. Now, the thing is, you'd think it might end there. Chinese Passbook Douche, or Passport Douche, whatever you want to call him, he might have made that cringe film and then gauged the response on the Chinese internet. The majority of people online were making fun of him or saying this is absolutely ridiculous, at least the crowds that I follow, my Chinese friends. But there were a subset of people that found this very inspiring. You know, there's a subset of uneducated people that will never leave China, and they think it's really, really cool. They can see their own comrade abroad, you know, in Cuba, being able to stay safe and representing his motherland. Hold on, they're definitely gonna use copyright music. This is the weird thing in China. They can actually use just copyrighted music and they don't have to worry about anything because there's no copyright law in China, really. I mean, there is on paper, but they don't actually do anything about it. So I'm gonna actually throw some no copyright music in here instead. There we go. Okay, so they go, let's go get Gawang. Gawang is his name. John says, Gawang is my friend. Gawang says, I'm Chinese. So again, he's approached by a different group of thieves / criminals. He's not gonna take it laying down. He is Chinese after all. Chinese people are all about unity and friendship and being helpful and peace loving. Don't cause shit and you won't have anything to worry about. Tell him to go away. He's Chinese. Well, he doesn't look Chinese. That's quite the straw man argument they're using there. Does it really matter? So they asked for some proof. These evil Cubans. Prove it. This is the proof. I am Chinese. Chinese passport. Oh, it's a Chinese passport. Look, it's a Chinese passport. Oh my gosh. Look at this. Oh, it's very interesting. All right, all right. Let's go, John and Anna. And he's got his girlfriend there, and him and his buddy John and Anna, they walk away safe with the protection of the Chinese passport. By the way, I made this way, way too cool with that music. We need to change this music to a little more appropriate sound. So you think it might end there, you know, when faced with all the ridicule of going to a country that China claims is their best friend. Cuba and China relations are fantastic, right? Both communist countries. And he's gonna go there to this country that's supposed to be a compatriot with China and then villainize the local populace to make them look like evil criminals that he needs to fend off with his Chinese passport. I mean, the storyline is ridiculous, but it gets even more ridiculous because there's a massive plot hole in the sequel here. They say, so we meet again. So they've already been presumably fended off, whether it was in the last video or another video, they've already presumably been fended off by a Chinese passport or flag. And then they go and bully him again. So they're supposed to be all like enamored with the fact that he's Chinese and that China will protect him and they leave him alone. But then I guess they changed their mind? No, feed him to the sharks. I'm too young to die. Help me. So they get ready to feed him to the sharks, but then at the last second, what do they pull out? They pull out a Chinese flag. Now that's a serious red flag. I'm so lucky to have you. So, I mean, it's all these straw man situations where he's being bullied or beat up by the poor locals, but he always manages to get out. But a lot of these same characters are in the next film, like this one. So he gets real mouthy here. He's like, don't touch my bag. That's what he's actually concerned about. Now, the sad thing here is his girlfriend, Anna, he doesn't seem to care about her too much. He just cares about his frickin' bag. What's so important that's in that bag? I want you guys to actually just guess. As you're watching this video, what do you think is in this bag that is so important? Oh. He says this flag is more important than my own body. Passport Douche seems to think that his $1 flag in his backpack that for some bizarre reason he's carrying around, maybe he uses a blanket, I'm not sure, is more important than his girlfriend that's being manhandled on the side. So in this plot here, the guy that's supposedly gonna rob him and take his girlfriend away and do God knows what with them is so moved by his impassioned speech about how much he loves his mother country, China, that he lets them go. I like how he's very, very enthused and he's like touched by his speech. He's like, God, this guy loves his country, but he still like throws his bag at him like he's pissed off. Let's see what happens in this next one. Sorry, I gotta change this music. It's definitely gonna be copywritten again. You guys get in the car. All right, so it looks like so it looks like the same group of thieves, maybe a couple new members here actually, are gonna come get him. So he fakes a trip and he trips in the middle of the road and says, John, give me the stick. Very interesting. Scrambling around here. What's he gonna pull out? Guys, what do you think? What do you think he's gonna pull out of his bag? Well, this time he's actually putting the flag on a stick to wave it properly. Now this is the way to do it. So let's see what the thugs have to say about this. So they're gonna roll around in this old American car in Cuba with a giant Chinese flag waving. And for some reason, now the thugs are fine. Our motherland will take us home. Let's go to the safest place in the world. I'm praying to God this guy doesn't have some sort of like mental disability, because then I'm just making fun of somebody that needs help. But seriously, maybe this is a type of disability here, because we're literally looking at a guy that's teaching people, maybe for the first time when they go abroad, when they encounter a problem, they should either string up a giant Chinese flag and charge into the crowd, or potentially causing vehicular manslaughter, or to whip out their passport, because somehow people are going to be scared about that. And before we move on to some more clips, I want to kind of paint a picture here, guys. The US government is famous for being a country, and actually a lot of countries in Europe in particular, are famous for when their citizens get into trouble abroad, for going on diplomatic missions to go help those citizens return home safely. China is not that country. China's the country that when Russia invaded Ukraine, they told everyone to chill out and wait. They didn't help anyone. People were left stranded. And this has happened time and time again. When Chinese citizens face some sort of problem, the Chinese government doesn't give an absolute shit about them when they're abroad. It's basically like, when you carry this passport, you're shit out of luck. Nobody's coming to help you. So where does this actually come from? This actually stems from this movie that was created kind of with this nationalistic fervor, which was starring this famous Chinese actor called Wu Jing. And in this movie, Wu Jing basically goes and saves these African people in this African country because China is a peacekeeper and China will rescue you and take care of you. And now is the new age for China. If you have a Chinese passport and a Chinese face, then you will be able to go around the world and you'll be super safe. Just look at what he said. So when the Chinese government sponsors these very nationalist movies to try to inspire young people in China, it has a very, very negative effect, because what it does is create this kind of Han chauvinism that means that when you are abroad, you are more important than other people. When in fact, people should be traveling to another country and acting like a guest in that country and being polite, and hopefully in return, those people of that country will be nice to you and kind. Now, the problem with this is you see this kid, this passport douche kid, we can laugh at it all day, but more importantly, I think it's a real symptom and byproduct of how uneducated nationalism can get absolutely out of control in a place like China that controls all of the narrative. There is no equivalent. China is a country that literally controls everything from the top. There is no independent media. There are no people that can operate like me out of China with their own personal opinions about stuff. You cannot commentate on politics or really anything without serious repercussions, because you're living in a country that's a 9 out of 100 on the freedom charts. You're living in a country that blocks most of the internet. And you're living in a country that's telling its citizens that its passport and its country is the safest and best country in the world that will get you out of every problem. And that's just simply not the case. In fact, if we look at the stats, China has a very, very bad passport. If we want to look at strength of passports, you know, how strong is your passport to get you out of situations? How strong is your passport to get you into countries without a visa or interviews? China's pretty low. It's right down there in the middle somewhere. This is not a country that's gonna come to your rescue. Perhaps the most ridiculous thing about all of this kind of reminds me of the whole Belt and Road Initiative, the idea that China is going to go out there and rescue all these countries by developing their infrastructure and stuff, when all they actually do is start projects, buy off corrupt dictators, and then expect everyone to cheer them on while they have these half-assed projects around the world and put these countries into debt. This kind of nationalistic chauvinism is seen in videos like this, where this supposedly rich Chinese dude goes to poor Cuba and goes and tries to rescue some of the people there while fighting off the evil thugs and poor people. China doesn't really have any friends around the world. They can try to buy them all they want, but really diplomacy comes down to the fact that you treat other people the way they wanted to be treated, and in turn, diplomacy works that way too. You don't run around using wolf warrior diplomacy to piss everyone off. You treat people nicely and fairly, and that's simply not what China is doing. I mean, we're in a situation here where this dude is in Cuba, and the guy's first impression is that Chinese people eat dogs. I mean, he's literally calls him a good Chinese because he doesn't eat dogs. And then all of a sudden, this relationship is supposed to blossom. This kind of shows China's relationship with the rest of the world. They kind of buddy up to countries that don't know very much about it, and the people's perception on the ground doesn't really change. You can look at any Pew Research poll. There are very few countries that have a positive perception of China, whether they be their allies or friends or not. They have simply not facilitated any real diplomatic connections like other countries have. And that's not gonna change when they keep acting like this. So as funny and as ridiculous as all this stuff is, China's just simply not in a place to push its weight around the world, and I think it's not a good idea to tell its citizens to brandish their passport and flag to get out of hairy situations, because I'll tell you what, it's not gonna work. Now, all of these clips came from my live show, which is called The China Show. The China Show is my China up-to-date current events show that I have every single Friday with my buddy Winston. We go through the Chinese news, we go through what's happening on the Chinese internet, we go through all of the current events, and we break it down for you live every Friday. I promise you guys, you're absolutely gonna love it, so please go over there and subscribe. It's free, of course. And don't forget, every single Monday, I have a secret show. No joke, I have a secret show. It's called After Work, or Xiaban Ho. And in Xiaban Ho, I go through all the stuff that I can't show on YouTube, if you catch my drift. It's definitely the place you want to be, and it's the best way to support me too. Thanks for sticking around for Passport Douche. I think we can learn a lot, and don't forget to follow me on the other channels as well. Thanks.